Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
We want to wish all of you a series of great holidays. It's during this 2 or 3 week period that many people around the world, for different reasons, celebrate various holidays. And as you're at home, I hope with your family and maybe by the fireside enjoying this day, we would like to bring you another program. We try to pick programs around the holidays that have an appropriateness to you who are home during those periods of time. And again, we'd like to take this opportunity to wish you a very great New Year, which is coming in a very few days. And we hope next year is the best year that you've ever had. We welcome to the program Steve Gerber, who is the Executive Director of the Idaho Historical Society, and we thought it's so appropriate to talk about some historical aspects of our area of the world. And we'd like to welcome you, Steve. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here.
And so I'm very pleased to have 3 panelists to interview our guest today. First of all, Janelle Burke, who's an attorney in the state of Idaho, and next to her is Judy Meyer, who's on the board of trustees at North Idaho College and is a former chair of the Idaho State Board of Education. And our third panelist is Erna Reinhardt, who is Director of Public Relations at North Idaho College, and we shall invite Janelle Burke to commence questioning.
Steve, it's a pleasure to have you here. It's very appropriate at the end of a year to be thinking about history, and it's also, of course, as we start into the new year, it's a good time to be thinking about historical things. You're the Executive Director of the Idaho State Historical Society.
Right.
What exactly is this organization, and how is it made up of people?
Well, the State Historical Society actually is an agency of state government. It's an agency that works under the State Board of Education because a great deal of the material that we provide is used educationally, whether it be research or just providing information when Idaho history is being taught, those types of things, and adult education too, with visiting museums and other facilities that we have like that. The Historical Society was created in 1907 by the legislature. Its roots go back to 1881 when a group of Idaho pioneers started an organization that evolved into the Historical Society. We operate basically our mission is to work on the preservation of our state, the education of people, and the interpretation of the state's history. And we have 43 full-time equivalent people on our staff. Our agency budget is $4 million a year, of which half comes from the general fund. The other portions come from federal government grants and from fees that are paid for various kinds of services that we provide that make up the rest of that money.
Or donations, I'm sure.
Donations. We certainly look for that.
And you have a board then that helps
Right.
you direct?
Right. The board of trustees is a 7-member board of trustees appointed by the State Board of Education, and there's one representative from each of the 7 judicial districts in the state of Idaho. In the case of North Idaho, of course, Judy is our trustee, and we have trustees out of Orofino and Weiser and Boise and Bliss and Pocatello and Hamer, which is a town just outside of Roberts, which is just outside of Idaho Falls in eastern Idaho.
Judy Meyer.
Thank you, Tony, and it's fun to work with you again, Steve, and good to have you here in northern Idaho.
Thank you.
Because one of my roles as a board member has been to help share what we taxpayers all provide, and yet is harder to identify with because much of what the services are provided occur in Boise, where you're headquartered, and where our state museum is. But I would welcome your comments on the kinds of programs and projects you have, not only in Boise, but throughout the state, and a little bit more about where you would like to see things go in the future for Historical Society.
I went to school in eastern Idaho at Idaho State University. I come up to northern Idaho. In fact, I have kids that live at Rathdrum, a son and grandkids and his wife. And so, my perspective is a statewide perspective just because of jobs I've had in the past and those types of things. I think our agency has really grown in its statewide perspective too. It's true the museum is at Boise, and our location from the standpoint of facilities is down there, but we have other presence around the state. We have historic sites that we oversee in south of Hanson in the Magic Valley. We have 5 buildings in Franklin that are our responsibility. The Pierce Courthouse here in North Idaho is the oldest public building in the state of Idaho. It was the original courthouse for Shoshone County when Pierce was the county seat. And on a statewide basis, we provide services to research that's being done. The 4th graders all get a great deal of Idaho history information. We have programs like Idaho History Day that over 1,000 kids throughout the state of Idaho participate in every year as a competition, and our winners then go back to the national competition in Maryland. We have publications, the roadside signs that you see throughout the state of Idaho that the transportation puts up are produced by the Historical Society. And the big change for us is the internet and its capabilities. We right now average about 1,000 people a day that visit www.idahohistory.net. And we have a tremendous amount of information there about Idaho history for people who are looking for that and doing research on various things.
Could I follow up a second, because we talked about the State Historical Society Museum, all us taxpayers are part of that, but then also there are many local community museums where we as a historical society do not oversee directly any policy making at all. But are you not a resource for those museums? How do we help?
Well, we're a member of the Idaho Museum Association to begin with, which is composed of many of those museums as far as representation. But we have traveling exhibits that we send out and work with them on. Our staff comes and does training programs, and probably one of the most active areas has been along the Lewis and Clark Trail, because there's been funding available in that region because of the bicentennial to do a lot of training. In fact, we've put there have been thousands of dollars in grants that have gone to those museums through that corridor to do training, as well as just to update their exhibits and signage and fix the buildings up, because people traveling with Lewis and Clark, for example, are not going to have a whole lot of information about them because there wasn't a lot recorded. You can probably find out by visiting a site fairly quickly. Well, what do you do from that point on? It's a great opportunity for them to go see what the local history is by visiting the museum, so we want to be prepared for those kinds of things with the bicentennial.
Erna Reinhardt.
Steve, I have to admit I have not been to the museum before, so please share with our viewers where you are located, and if they were to go there, what kind of exhibits would they see?
Well, the State Historical Museum is just right off of Capitol Boulevard, the main street that comes down from the depot to the Capitol, if anybody's been in Boise. We are right at Julia Davis Park. There's an art museum adjacent to us, so the Black History Museum is adjacent to us, and right out in front is a statue of Sacagawea, and it's pretty hard to miss the building if you're looking for it. The facility really is a compendium of many aspects of Idaho history. We have everything from displays of Chinese apothecary that existed in Boise at one time, to what back porches looked like in the 1930s, to blacksmith shops and Native American displays, and we have one of the largest collections of pyromorphite stones in the United States in our collection, which came from North Idaho, from the Sunshine Mine, which is a really unique mineral that is very rare, and so there's just a real variety and an opportunity to find out, a lot about the history of Idaho, and it's a lot of the schools travel into there. The museum has around 200,000 visits a year. I mean, some duplications of people coming back, but those are the numbers, which are pretty substantial, and it's been accredited. It was the first museum accredited west of the Mississippi by the National Museum Association, and has been accredited ever since the 1950s, and is highly thought of.
Wonderful, thanks.
I would like to build upon that particular comment, and that is that there are different historical societies in different states, and you say you have the National Historical Association. Do you work closely, particularly here in the Pacific Northwest, with other states and sharing information or ideas or processes?
We do, if nothing else, with certainly in the Pacific Northwest, Lewis and Clark has stimulated a lot of that interaction. And in fact, Keith Peterson, is the Idaho coordinator, works for the Historical Society and is assigned and works out of Lewiston. So we have a presence, outside of Boise just from that. But Keith works a lot with the other states. I know the other directors, and we have a group actually that get together once a year of Historical Society directors, and we all go around stealing each other's great ideas, and which we're glad to do. I've certainly gotten great ideas and things to do in Idaho from other states, and they've done the same thing from Idaho too. So there is a desire for all of us to spread knowledge of the successes we've had to hopefully help others in other states improve their historical holdings also.
Does every state have a society?
Some states have organizations for the most part. May not be called a society. In some cases it's a state agency, and some states they actually only have a private organization that would be their state historical society, and Minnesota is an example of that, and it really varies from state to state as far as how they function.
Thank you. Janelle Berg.
Some of us are very interested in history and in historical pasts of our own families and so forth. We might even have some things that belong to the family, and we would like to know more about them. How does the Historical Society assist people in knowing what to do to preserve the history they have?
Well, it kind of depends on what we're talking about. From the standpoint of artifacts, for example, three-dimensional objects, we're glad to try to give people guidance on where they might find out information about those, and if we can, we will provide that information. We don't do appraisals. They would have to go out and do that themselves, because in the process of an appraisal, particularly if you're going to make a donation or something, then it's up to you and the IRS to decide what the real value is rather than us. But we certainly accept those kind of things, and we look for objects not that are 50 years and older or anything like that. We are looking for things that we can put into our holdings that 50 years from now we will possess, that will become historic objects. From the standpoint of paper and photos and those kinds of things, we have a group separate from the museum, and that is the archives people who take care of those types of things. And Steve Walker, our state archivist, travels all over the state giving seminars on how you protect records and things like that. We're always looking for photos. A lot of times people, when someone passes away, they'll go to the family photos and they find all these pictures of the aunts and uncles that they keep, and then they find the pictures of the family car and the street back in the 1940s and with the trip to Yellowstone. They throw all those away. Those are the kinds of things we love to have, especially if we know where those locations are, because it basically gets those into our photo file. So somebody comes in and says, boy, I wish I had a picture of Main Street in Coeur d'Alene in 1942 when we lived there, and suddenly we have that photo because somebody didn't need it and thought, well, let's just go ahead and turn that over to the Historical Society. So we're always looking for those kind of things, and you never know when something special is going to happen. I, here in North Idaho, met with a legislator, Bonnie Douglas, and she said, oh, by the way, here's some things I have in a box, and she gave me 2 French-made 17th century pistols that had been in the family, and she was worried that that nobody would care for them or whatever, and she donated them to the Historical Society for one of our major exhibits. It's an evolution of firearms exhibit that we have in Boise. So we're always looking for those wonderful things like that, and even the mundane. People think, I have this old computer that was one of the first ones ever made. Just toss it out. Boy, if it's that old and unique, we're interested at least in having a chance to say yes or no if we're interested in it.
Thank you.
Judy Meyer.
And to follow up on that, Steve, that's the fun part for me to be a board member, is to have a chance to tour some of the facilities, the behind-the-scenes working facilities, the archives that you just mentioned, for instance, where I know you need a climate-controlled, for instance, to protect fabrics. You've just shown us. You showed us not only household objects, but as you mentioned, the weapons collection and so on. So I have really 2 questions. One is for folks who live within the state of Idaho, you are the source of both identifying what they have if they're willing to share, either to give them information and preservation or for the contributions to come to you. And I guess because we are shown elsewhere, I would suggest wherever people are, check with their local historical society.
Exactly.
But then what happens to folks who contribute to something or offer you something that you already have 14 of?
Yeah.
How can people still share?
Well, in those cases, we usually do try to have them, contact their local societies, certainly before we accept them. And we do say no sometimes if we have too many of something. There's just no need for it. And we try to help them if there's any other possibility as far as where those kinds of things can go. But the Historical Society, what we do goes beyond just being an attic, so to speak. I mean, we have archaeologists that work for us who work statewide on those kinds of things. Our historical historical library has the largest collection of genealogical material for studies between Seattle and Salt Lake City, and we have about 40,000 people a year who come through and do that kind of research. And the archives, which you mentioned, which has substantial holdings of government and private records and things like that. We have over 300,000 photos in our possession recording the history of Idaho. And then, of course, we run the old penitentiary in Boise and the sites that I'd mentioned around the state also. So much broader scope than just strictly running the museum, which most people identify with. And for those who have been there, yes, the two-headed calf still exists at the museum, which is the thing that I think goes back 40, 50 years. I always have people say, well, gosh, I was there when I was a kid, and they're in their probably their 40s. Is the two-headed calf still there? Yep, it's right there in the saloon as an oddity.
Thank you.
Myrna Reinhardt.
I'm always interested how education institutions can relate with other agencies, and I understand that the museum or maybe the Historical Society also offers internships to either high school students or college students. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we really look for the opportunity to be able to help those who are interested in history and might want to look at it as a profession to get an exposure that helps them decide, is this what I'm really interested in, or what aspect of history would I be interested in? And we are looking for people who want to come in and work on internships. There are some opportunities, particularly with the Idaho History Day, where we bring in an intern who helps us with that particular program for a period of time that actually gets some compensation for it. Most of what we do is depend on volunteers and people who want to learn and just enjoy themselves with history to do those kind of things. But because we're in the proximity of Boise State University, that's where a lot of our interns come from, is through their history program. But we've also had interns from Albertson College. Some students have come from the other universities, U of I, North Idaho College, and Idaho State, who live in Boise, so they come and do a summer internship while they're back home or something. And we're always looking for that, and have found it's a great experience. We had a group of NESPERS students come down and spend several weeks working on our archives because they were going to create their own archives, the NESPERS were, and they got training on how to do that type of thing. So we're really there as a training facility and an education facility, in addition to just trying to do preservation work.
Because we have so much modern technology and it works in all fields at North Idaho College, we reach out to many communities, 12 or 14 in our area, in offering courses. And so you're using technology too on the internet.
Right.
If someone is in the far distant areas of Idaho from Boise and North Idaho or Eastern Idaho, when they go up on the internet, can they see almost everything you have there at the museum, or are there things that would have to be, obviously there's a great advantage to coming and seeing it in person and talking with your staff, but how much can they get from a distance?
Yeah. Well, the primary thing you can do is just Idaho history information. If you have a subject or an event or something like that, we have over 1,000 different events and pieces of information that you can get to that are generally 1 or 2 pages long. And a lot of teachers use that when they're doing history. We are in the process of migrating 3-dimensional photos of artifacts onto the system, and we have a system called Discovery, which is the name of it, that we are putting a lot of things onto, and we're linking that into the internet. We can also do that with photos, and we have photo essays. You can take a tour of the Oregon Trail, for example, and read accounts of people in certain locations, and then see photos of what that area looks like today, and an explanation of what that might be. So there's that in place. We have some photo collections that are now on the internet that you can browse through. One of the most recent ones is one of a lot of mining up in the Wardener, Wallace area that were a lot of photos out of that period in the 1920s and 30s that we've put online also. So we just keep adding and adding, I guess. And there's with well over 500,000 artifacts, it's going to take us a long time to migrate all of them in from the standpoint of photos, certainly.
And on behalf of the Chambers of Commerce of North Idaho, I would say that up in Shoshone County, there's a wonderful museum.
The mining museum?
The mining museum.
Absolutely.
It's just, and it keeps expanding. I've been there a couple of times, and
Yeah.
it's really great. It's preserving the history.
We had a great loan with them. They were commemorating the mining wars. We sent them up the bomb that killed Governor Steunenberg that we have the remnants of that's on display, and brought that display up for them to have in the museum at that point in time because it was significant to that era.
Right. Thank you. Janelle Burke.
Well, Tony didn't ask all of the questions. I want to give you a chance again to say your website.
Okay.
And also to say if people are interested in donating cash or other things, how they should get in touch with you. So would you give us your website?
The website is www.idahohistory.net. Rather than being .com, it's net. And that's pretty easy to remember and to get to us. From the standpoint of donations, the Historical Society is an education institution, so it qualifies for the education tax credit that if you give to the universities or colleges or education in general, you can qualify by giving to the Historical Society. And most of the money that comes to us comes into scholarship programs. There also is a new foundation that has been created, the Foundation for Idaho History, and David Leroy, who was a former Attorney General, is the president of that organization. The First Lady, Patricia Kempthorne, is on the board, and Harry Magnuson's on the board. Tim Olson, who used to be here in North Idaho and was on the school board, I think, in Coeur d'Alene, and lives in Boise now, is on the board. Joe Turtling from Boise, and Lorna Bard, who's on our board from Bliss, is also on that board, and Rydalls from Idaho Falls. So we have good cross-section of people from around the state on that foundation, and they're accepting donations and exist similar to the Park Foundation in support of Idaho Parks and Recreation. This new foundation supports the needs of the society that go beyond what we're able to do as a state agency from the standpoint of additional funds and those types of things. And we're always looking for and accepting donations and gifts of unique items and even the mundane items that nobody thinks ought to go to a museum that we love to see.
Thank you.
Judy Myron.
As we talk, Steve, I think about what a nice exchange it is between you needing donations from citizens, but also the giving that the museum provides back. That it is a good exchange, and I think it's a wonderful investment for our taxpayers. I also know that our budget as a historical society has been cut about 20%. And so the dilemma for us as an agency is the preservation of donations, and also then providing a service to membership. And we've talked about the foundation, but we haven't talked about membership per se. Folks can join the Idaho State Historical Society, and because of the cuts we had to reduce our publications, but we're also now firing up a statewide magazine called Idaho Yesterdays.
Mm-hmm. Right, yeah, when we went through the cutbacks that everybody did, our agency was down about 19.5% from 2 years ago. And as a result, we went through layoffs and cutbacks. We tried to look at those services we could bring back again once the funding became available. And Idaho Yesterdays, which is an academic journal, boy, we had a lot of people that missed that when we had to cut that back as an expense. We're doing a cooperative thing now with Idaho State University. Their history department is editing the publication, working with the other institutions to put that together, and then we're the publisher still of that. And it's one of the benefits of being a member of the Historical Society that you get that publication, our quarterly publication, newsletter, opportunities for tours and trips and discounts on various things, and membership is $40 for a family membership, for an annual membership, and in fact we're just getting that cranked up now that we're just right on the verge of going into the new year. We're kind of looking at next year's membership drive also.
Thank you.
Erna Reinhardt.
It sounds as though you also have several events throughout the year that may be of interest to our viewers, and one of those is a brown bag lecture series, and the other one is a special event that you have in September each year, I believe. Can you tell us a little bit?
Well, the September event is Museum Comes to Life, and what we do is bring in people who are artisans that do a lot of the the activities that you saw in history, whether it be making soap or teaching, or literally bringing sheep in that we shear and then make the wool and use the wool to make some items right there with the kids being able to watch it. We have antique cars that come in, Civil War enactors, mountain men, and musicians that play the old music, flint knappers that make Indian arrowheads, and just lots and lots of people. We had probably, we estimate somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 people on Saturday of 2003 when we had Museum Comes to Life, and it's very, very popular. And it's the same kind of thing that we see happening with a lot of other museums around the state. We're not unique in that those types of activities take place, but it's great for kids and to see hands-on kind of things out of the past. And the brown bag luncheons that we have one once a month that the Friends of the Museum coordinate, and it's just a wide variety of presentations on a wide variety of subjects. And of course our staff loves to travel around if they're on the road, and it makes it better when they're in conjunction with another trip. That's what I'm doing up here right now, and I go out and actually do presentations in character as Ulysses Grant and Jean-Baptiste Charbonneau, Sacagawea's baby who grew up, and other people, because people enjoy history much more if you can do it kind of in that first-person vein. And so we just do a lot of things around the state that people don't hear about, unfortunately, as much as we wish they did, and we appreciate this opportunity to talk about them.
But certainly on this program, you've done an excellent job of making it clear what you're all about, and we're very short on time, but in, say, 30 seconds or 40 seconds, why is that society necessary?
Well, there's a tremendous interest in this state in its heritage. And what we've seen in the period that I've been at the agency has been this attitude that it's very important as long as it doesn't cost money. And unfortunately, we can't accomplish those things, and we are coming in with some major legislation to deal with that. I think if there's anything people need to understand, that is that if we don't invest in our history, we won't have a history. So I think with the positive things that we're seeing, there is a bright future for the past, I guess.
Well, what a wonderful note on which to end the program. On behalf of our panel and our staff, Steve Gerber, thank you, the Executive Director of the Idaho Historical Society. It's been great having you here, and on a future program, you're going to do a character. So
okay, great.
Our viewers will get to see your talents at work and how that's such a good medium in which to tell history. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to take this time to wish you again a very wonderful 2004. I hope things go very well for you and that you'll continue to be our viewers next year. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.